So the first question is from Brenda. Will you comment on the impact of hardcore porn on men's suicidal ideation as it impacts their psyches?
Oh, yeah. So there's an incredible researcher called Marie Crabb, who I highly recommend checking out. We're doing a lot of research actually on the interlinking, because this is the thing. If you talk about porn or you talk about the manosphere and TikTok and YouTube, and then you start to talk about gambling, all of this is interlaced here in young men's lives. There's obviously a lot of research looking at the impact of porn on sexual violence, but I clinically am seeing a lot of young men with porn addictions who have such a shame response and such an undermining of their values and sense of self that it is causing suicidality as a result. And that's typically typically related to the idea of who I should be and what type of relationships I should have. Porn undermines ability for sexual intimacy with others. And so it's interesting, there's a whole body of literature, and there's a lot of stuff going on around something called the no-fap situation, which you can Google in your own time, but it's the idea that lots of young men are pushing away from porn and saying, I'm not going to do that, but they're doing it probably for the wrong reasons as well. And so, yes, I would say that there needs to be way more work done looking at the impacts of porn on young men's mental health. But I think full stop, we can be pretty clear on the fact that it's not doing them any good.
Thanks, Zac. Trudy is asking, can you provide perspective on gaming and technology on men, particularly young men?
Yeah. So I have a book coming out in September, hopefully, which is going to go through all of these different areas and all of the literature in them. So keep an eye out on my LinkedIn or Twitter for that. But we've got a whole chapter on gaming and esports. Movember is going to invest pretty heavily in these spaces because we know that's where young men are. Like, over 1 billion young guys are playing games, and we can't just throw out the baby with the bathwater and say it's all harmful. There's no way. There's a lot of social connection that comes in with gaming, and there are certain games which are, good for neuroplasticity and all of that other stuff that's going on. But it's the Goldilocks zone that we are seeking in our research, which is where is that best moment? Where is the amount of time that they can play this stuff that is actually not going to be harmful? Because the amount of gaming addiction that's going on at the moment, where young men, we talk about the amount that they're on social media, the amount of gaming that is taking place in young men is endless, which is only going to mean that there is less time for them to have face-to-face connection. And so we need longitudinal data now moving forward to understand how that is going to play out on their social and emotional well-being. But I would say that let's again not do this alarmist narrative where we go, all right, no games for you, no phones for you. I just think that banning things is not the answer. We need to start to have open communication around what it is, what impact they feel like it's having. We need to embrace the idea that there is awareness that we can cultivate in these young men to go, wait a second, have I been on my phone too long? Have I called my friend? Have I done this? That's the type of skill set, the type of literacy that we want.
Does your gut feeling tell you that it's not as much about the hours, but it's the hours in relation to the hours they're spending doing face-to-face activities and alternative things?
Yeah, it's also like it totally depends on their state of being. Like if you are gaming or watching porn to regulate your emotions, that is a problem. So if you don't have another outlet to self-soothe, then that idea, we've all felt that. You get your phone, you're suddenly scrolling because you're stressing out about something. It doesn't alleviate the distress. It just pushes it further away. So I think that type of, understanding amongst young men is going to be really useful.
Thanks, Zac. Next question is from Liel. What would you suggest as an alternative to toxic masculinity?
As a term?
An alternative.
Yeah. Toxic masculinity, is problematic because it is a static, overarching mentality, which is that if you place it in front of masculinity as a singular to start with, what you do is you say everything that is masculine is toxic. And that's the way, and it doesn't even matter what our intention is. Young men are reading it that way, and so the outcome is problematic because it's isolating. instead, we should be focusing on healthy masculinities. We should be having front page news that is not Trump and Weinstein, but is instead good dads out there. What is happening? Let's pump up these role models and give them airtime and focus on all that is possible, because then men can strive for something.
Thanks, Zach. This is a good question from Victoria. How do we balance the need to hold patriarchal systems to account and challenge traditional ideas that are extremely harmful for both men and women, while also managing the defensiveness of that criticism that pushes some men further into traditional ideas? Good luck answering that one.
Yeah. I'll write an essay in response, but largely that's the tension that we're all dealing with, which is like, you don't want to isolate the men, but you also want to call it out. So what we're trying to do is call them in, which is call them into a cause which goes, hey, the domestic violence crisis that's going on, the suicide crisis that's going on, all of these things that are playing out in society, there are pressures that are on you that are causing this type of behavior. Why don't you come and join us and tell us what they are and help us find a solution? Rather than us blaming you for them, let's find a way to co-create solutions. And that's the way that I kind of go about it. But honestly, if terms like patriarchy are going to isolate certain men, then just swallow your pride and don't use it. I just think we need to be more pragmatic sometimes. And, we get ideological with some of this stuff, but we need to realize if we want, whoever it is to stop harming themselves or others, we need to be open-minded about how we're going to go about solving it.
Absolutely. Victoria is asking, what role do you think capitalism plays in the thriving of these traditional norms of success being showing materialistic wealth?
Huge. This is good. We're getting all of the big topics going on. We can start to talk about climate in a second, and the fact that young men and boys do not show up when it comes to climate change. You will not see them at rallies. They do not seem to galvanize in the same way that young women do, and that's something that we're going to be dealing with. And I think the capitalism kind of comes in there. But patriarchy and the way in which masculinity exists is directly tied to capitalism in a different way to how women have grown up in a caring culture in a way. And so we need to get men off that treadmill and realize that value comes from elsewhere.
It's a good follow-up question here from Tony. Would equality within all societies lessen the burdens on men? It appears that there is more emphasis on select minority groups.
Yes, equality across the board is always going to be useful, but I think we need to be very clear, and this is something I've been talking with Jess Hill about. The Me Too movement is a perfect example. We're seeking equality, we're calling out bad behavior, and we believed it to be a linear trajectory where we're all going to benefit together. The thing is that we didn't bring men and boys along for that journey. And it was created understandably amongst a disenfranchised group of women who were fed up. But we're now seeing a backlash response. And there's something called the Nordic paradox, which is that, Iceland and Sweden, for instance, are examples that everyone throws around for everything. Suicide prevention, domestic violence, look at how good they are at everything, except that their domestic violence rates are increasing despite the fact that they have paternity leave, they've got no gender pay gap, they've got incredible social equity going on, but yet their violence is going up. And that's because there is always going to be backlash responses that need to be understood and spoken to here. And that's what the manosphere is, really. It's a backlash that we need to really start to get to the bottom of.